One day, Evelyn Turner was enjoying a peaceful cup of tea in her beloved home when suddenly her son Austin walked in and said, "My wife, kids, and mother-in-law will be staying here. It's going to be crowded, but we've decided." Without saying a word, Evelyn stood up, her eyes filled with determination. This time, no one was going to take over her life. Austin, in frustration, told her, "You need to leave." But Evelyn knew one thing for sure. This home was hers, and she wasn't giving it up. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for more stories like this. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Evelyn Turner was not the kind of woman who had ever expected things to come easily. At 70, her life was a quiet testament to a history of hard work and perseverance. For decades, she had cleaned other people's homes, taken on extra shifts, and sacrificed every luxury so that one day she could have a place of her own. And now, as she sat at her kitchen table, sipping her morning coffee, that place, her sanctuary, was in danger of being overrun. Evelyn had earned everything she had. She had worked tirelessly, saved every penny, and eventually bought her own home, the one she had always dreamed of. It wasn't the biggest house, but it was hers, and it was perfect for her. The garden outside, the cozy living room with the old leather couch she had restored herself, and the sewing room where she created quilts and dresses. Everything in her home reflected years of effort, care, and independence. This was her peace. That was until Austin Turner walked in. Austin, her son, didn't knock. He never did. He simply entered her house like it was his own, casually calling out, "Hey, Mom, got a minute?" His voice was light, too light for what he was about to say. Evelyn hadn't even turned to face him when he dropped the bombshell. "I've decided, Mom, we're moving in here. It'll be temporary, just until we find something bigger for the family." The words hit Evelyn like a punch to the gut. For a moment, the room seemed to close in on her. She didn't even know how to respond. The shock was so overwhelming that she could barely breathe. "Wait, what?" Her voice shook, but she forced herself to stay calm. "What do you mean, moving in here? This is my house, Austin." Austin, as usual, shrugged it off with a laugh. "Oh, come on, it's just until we find a place of our own. You're all alone here. We'll be good company. And besides, there's plenty of room." Evelyn froze, the words stinging more than she could have imagined. "You're all alone here?" It was as if everything she had worked for, every late night scrubbing floors, every penny saved for this house, meant nothing to him. He hadn't even asked if she was okay with it. It was as if her home was just a convenience for him, to be used when it suited his family's needs. He didn't even ask. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt a surge of something unfamiliar to her, something beyond the shock and pain. It was a quiet, simmering determination. "No," she thought, her chest tightening. "I will not let this happen." She didn't speak right away. She didn't even look at Austin as he continued pacing through her living room, making plans as though he was the one who lived there. But inside, Evelyn was already calculating her next move. This wasn't going to be like all the other times. This time she was going to speak up. This time she was going to set boundaries. She wasn't going to just accept things because it was easier for everyone else. "How long were you planning on staying?" she asked, her voice steady now. Austin's face lit up, oblivious to the weight of the moment. "Not long, maybe a few months. It'll be fine, Mom. The kids are excited, and so is Emily." The kids. Evelyn's heart ached. She loved her grandchildren, Aiden and Sophie, but the idea of her home being overrun by more people than it could comfortably hold was too much. Her space, the one place in the world that she had created for herself after years of raising children and caring for others, was about to be invaded without a single word of consultation. Evelyn clenched her fists, her knuckles white with the force of it. She stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the small garden she had tended with love. This was hers. She had worked so hard to make this life hers, to carve out a corner of the world that no one else could claim. Her heart raced, the emotional pain threatening to overwhelm her. But there was something else there, something stronger than the sting of betrayal. It was resolve. She wasn't going to let this happen. Not like this. "I'll make it work," she said aloud to herself, her voice firm. It wasn't defeat she was feeling. it was the first flicker of defiance. This time, it was going to be different. As Austin babbled on about logistics, Evelyn tuned him out, her mind already working, already planning. She wouldn't let him or anyone walk over her again. Not this time. The shock and emotional pain would fade. But what would remain was something much stronger. Evelyn Turner's determination to protect the peace she had worked so hard to create. Austin Turner was never one to think much about his mother's feelings. Over the years, he had come to expect that Evelyn would always bend to his needs. She was his mother, after all. His voice was casual, almost too casual, as he continued to explain the details of the move, his confidence unwavering. "You're not getting any younger, Mom," Austin said almost dismissively. "It'll be good for you to have some company around. You know, someone to keep an eye on you. What if something happens to you? You can't keep living alone like this." Evelyn felt her chest tighten at his words. The implication was clear. At her age, she wasn't capable of taking care of herself. The idea that he believed she needed someone to keep an eye on her stung more deeply than anything else he had said. She had spent her life taking care of everyone else, her children, her husband, and countless others. And now Austin was treating her as if she were the one in need of care, as if she was some fragile old woman who couldn't possibly make decisions for herself. Austin, oblivious to the silent storm brewing inside her, continued, "And besides, it'll be good for you to have more people around. You won't feel so lonely. Martha's getting old too, and the kids need space to play. This is the best option for everyone, really. You're just too attached to being alone, Mom. You've had your time." The words hit Evelyn like sharp knives. Lonely? She's too attached to being alone? All the years she'd spent working hard to create a home for herself, to carve out a space where she could be alone, where she could just be herself, meant nothing to him. He was erasing her autonomy with one casual sentence after another. Evelyn had always been the one to say yes, to give in. She had spent decades putting her family's needs before her own. But now, as Austin stood there, treating her home like an afterthought, she felt something shifting inside her. She had been a mother, a caretaker, for so long that she had forgotten how to stand up for herself. No more. She could feel the internal transformation, like a rising tide within her. She was no longer the submissive mother she had once been. She had lived for others for so long, but now it was time to live for herself. She looked at Austin, standing there in his usual arrogance, the same arrogance that had always been a part of him. He didn't understand. He didn't see how much he was hurting her, how much his assumptions and disrespect were weighing on her. He was too caught up in his own world to even ask if she was okay with the plans. He assumed he could just walk into her life, decide what was best for her, and that she would go along with it. The resentment that had simmered for so many years began to boil over. She wasn't going to let him manipulate her anymore. Evelyn's voice, when she finally spoke, was calm, far calmer than she felt inside. "Fine," she said, her words sharp and direct. "Bring them on Saturday." Austin beamed, thinking he had won, completely unaware of the shift in her. "Great, thanks, Mom. You won't regret it. You'll see we'll all get along just fine." He gave her a hug, one of those hugs that he'd always given her when he thought he had things under control, and left with a satisfied smile. Evelyn stood there in the silence of her living room, the weight of his words still hanging in the air. Her heart was pounding in her chest, but there was something else there now, a quiet strength. She had agreed, yes, but it wasn't because she was giving in. It wasn't because she was afraid of losing him or afraid of conflict. She had agreed because she needed him to think she was defeated. She needed him to believe that his plans were going to work. But Evelyn Turner was playing a different game now. She wasn't going to let him or anyone else walk all over her anymore. She had made her decision. Austin thought this was his victory, but he was wrong. This was Evelyn's victory. As the door clicked shut behind him, Evelyn turned and walked to the window. She looked out at the garden she had carefully tended to, the space that had brought her so much peace. She would protect this space, and she would protect herself. She wasn't just going to let things happen. She was going to make sure that her home, her sanctuary, was never taken for granted again. The seeds of her resolve had been planted, and now, with every step she took, They were beginning to grow. Evelyn Turner stood at the kitchen window, watching the early morning sunlight filter through the leaves of her small garden. The air was crisp, fresh, just the way she liked it. For the first time in days, she felt a sense of peace that had eluded her for far too long. The world outside was calm, quiet, yet inside she knew that everything was about to change. She wasn't going to let it happen quietly this time. With a steady hand, she picked up her phone and sent a simple message to her oldest and most trusted friend. "Sharon, can you come over early tomorrow? I need to talk to you about something very important." She placed the phone back on the counter and sighed, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. This was it. The beginning of her plan, a plan that would restore her control over her life and her home. Evelyn's routine had always been a source of comfort, a structure that kept her grounded. Each morning, she woke up at 5:30 a.m. as she had for the past decade and began her day with a warm cup of tea and a look through the neighborhood WhatsApp group. Her friends, ladies she had met through her morning walks, sent messages about their plans for the day, recipes they had discovered, or just funny little anecdotes. These small interactions, these simple exchanges, were the threads that wove her daily life together. She loved the rhythm of it all, the predictability, the calm. After scrolling through the messages, Evelyn would take a brisk walk through the park, where she greeted familiar faces and chatted with friends who, like her, had learned to appreciate the solitude of their later years. The walk gave her time to think, to clear her mind before the busyness of the day. Her body felt strong, her mind sharp. She was no longer just a mother or a caretaker. She was Evelyn, a woman who had learned to live on her own terms, but all of that was now at risk. Her peace, the life she had so carefully cultivated, was about to be disrupted by the very people she had spent her life caring for. Austin's selfishness had blindsided her, but now she would take control. She had to. As she finished her walk and returned home, the doorbell rang. Sharon Mitchell stood on the other side, her presence immediately calming. Sharon, a widow in her late 60s, was one of the few people who truly understood Evelyn's struggle. They had met years ago in the same walking group, and over time, their bond had deepened into a true friendship, one based on respect, understanding, and the kind of support only fellow women could offer. "Good morning, Evelyn," Sharon greeted her warmly, stepping inside. She glanced around, noting the calmness of the house, the quiet serenity that had once been Evelyn's sanctuary. "Morning," Evelyn replied, her voice soft but steady. "I need to talk to you. I've made a decision." Sharon sat down at the kitchen table, waiting for Evelyn to speak, her eyes filled with quiet concern. She knew something was weighing heavily on her friend. Evelyn had always been so independent, so determined, yet something had shifted in her lately. "I'm going to stop them," Evelyn said, her voice firm now. "I'm not going to let Austin or anyone else take over my home. This is my life, my house, and I'm not going to just sit back and let them walk all over me anymore." Sharon nodded, understanding immediately. She had always admired Evelyn's strength, but it was clear that something inside her had broken open. The woman sitting across from her was no longer the one who always gave in, the one who silently accepted whatever was thrown her way. No, Evelyn Turner was done being passive. She was ready to fight for herself. Evelyn leaned in closer, her eyes gleaming with resolve. "I've been planning this for weeks. I've thought about it every day. And now I need your help." Sharon leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. "What do you need me to do?" Evelyn smiled slightly, the weight on her shoulders lifting just a little. "I need you to be there for me. I need you to help me get everything in order, to make sure I'm doing this right. Austin thinks he can walk in here, make decisions about my life, and I'm not going to let him. I won't let him turn my peaceful home into a battlefield." Sharon's face softened, her expression a mixture of admiration and compassion. "You've got it, Evelyn. Whatever you need, I'm with you every step of the way." Evelyn felt a surge of gratitude for her friend. Sharon was the only person who truly respected her space, who didn't try to tell her what to do or treat her like she was incapable of making her own choices. She was the anchor Evelyn needed as she prepared for the storm ahead. Over the next few days, as Evelyn continued to plan her next steps, she couldn't help but reflect on how different her life had become. The daily routine she had worked so hard to build, the peace she had finally achieved after so many years of sacrifice, it was all in danger. But Evelyn knew that, for the first time in her life, she had the power to change things, and change them she would. As she sat with Sharon that afternoon, sipping tea and discussing the details of her plan, Evelyn Turner realized something profound. She had spent her entire life living for others. It was time to live for herself. She would fight for her home. She would fight for her peace. And this time, she would win. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the lace curtains, casting soft shadows across Evelyn Turner's cozy kitchen. The table was set with 2 cups of tea and a plate of homemade scones, small comforts that grounded her in moments like this. She had always cherished these quiet afternoons with Sharon Mitchell, their conversations flowing like a gentle river, full of laughter, memories, and a shared understanding of life's challenges. Evelyn looked across the table at her friend, who had become more than just a walking companion over the years. Sharon was the one person who knew Evelyn's heart, the years of hard work, the sacrifice, and most importantly, the unspoken tension that now brewed in her own home. "Sharon, you've known me long enough to know that I'm not someone who gives up easily," Evelyn said, her voice steady but laced with the weight of what she was about to reveal. "But I'm tired, Sharon. Tired of always putting everyone else's needs before mine, especially when it means losing myself in the process." Sharon gave a knowing nod, her eyes softening with compassion. She had seen Evelyn fight for her children, her husband, and her career. She had watched Evelyn spend years as the quiet backbone of her family, never asking for much in return. But now Sharon saw a different Evelyn, one who had reached a breaking point, a woman who had finally realized that her life, her home, her peace, those were worth fighting for. "I've been thinking about everything that's happened," Evelyn continued, her gaze drifting to the window as if searching for the right words. "Austin, my son, he's been manipulating me for years. And Emily, too. They've played on my sense of duty, my obligation as a mother. The problem is, they've made me feel like I'm the one who should sacrifice everything, just because I'm their mother. They've made me feel guilty for wanting to live for myself. But I won't let them do it anymore." Sharon sat back in her chair, taking a slow sip of her tea, her expression unreadable. She had seen this before, how children, no matter how well-intentioned, could subtly manipulate their aging parents into feeling like they owed them everything. She had witnessed the guilt trips, the emotional blackmail, the insidious manipulation that made Evelyn believe her needs didn't matter. "Do you think they really realize what they're doing?" Sharon asked, her voice gentle, though her words carried the weight of truth. "That they've been treating you like a resource instead of respecting you as a person?" Evelyn exhaled sharply, her fingers tightening around her teacup. "No, they don't. They think I'm just here to solve their problems. But I'm not a solution to be used when it's convenient. I'm their mother, yes, but that doesn't mean I have to give up my life for theirs. I've done that for too long." Sharon leaned forward, her expression serious now. "What are you going to do about it, Evelyn?" Evelyn paused, a deep breath filling her chest. She had been planning this for days, quietly strategizing in her mind, knowing that the time to act had come. "I'm going to stand up for myself, Sharon. I've been too passive for too long, letting Austin and Emily make decisions about my life without ever considering what I wanted. I'm going to make it clear that this house, my home, is not their property to decide over, and I won't let them manipulate me anymore." A silent understanding passed between the two women. Sharon had known this day would come. She had always seen the strength in Evelyn, but it was now, finally, that Evelyn was starting to see it in herself. Evelyn took a deep breath and looked Sharon in the eye. "I've thought about it, Sharon. I know what I need to do. I'm going to sell the house. I've been saving up for years, and now I have the financial freedom to make that choice. It's time for me to take back control of my life and my space." Sharon's eyes softened. "You've earned that, Evelyn. You've worked so hard, and you deserve the peace that's rightfully yours." Evelyn smiled faintly. "I don't want to leave this house, but I've realized it's just a building. It was my dream for so long, but now it's a place that's been turned into a battlefield. I can't live like this anymore, with Austin and Emily constantly pushing their own agenda. I need to move on, to a place where I'm not just their mother or their solution. I want to be Evelyn Turner, just Evelyn. Sharon nodded in agreement, and I'll be here every step of the way, helping you however I can. You're not alone in this. The next few days passed in a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and endless decision-making. Evelyn had already contacted a real estate agent, and Sharon had helped her navigate through the details, offering unwavering support. But even as the plan began to take shape, Evelyn couldn't shake the unease that lingered in the back of her mind. Austin and Emily were going to fight this. They would resist. She could already see their reaction, hear their accusations, their pleas. But Evelyn wasn't afraid. This time, she wasn't going to bend. The storm was coming, but Evelyn Turner was prepared. As the days passed, Evelyn felt a sense of calm settle over her. She wasn't rushing this decision. Everything she had done had been calculated, thoughtful. She wasn't going to make a rash emotional decision, no. This was a strategic move, and she had thought of every possible outcome. Evelyn's resolve was stronger than ever. She wasn't just protecting her home. She was protecting her peace. And, for the first time in a long time, that was enough. The soft afternoon light poured through the windows, but it didn't reach the corners of Evelyn Turner's living room the way it used to. Today, it felt distant, as though the warmth of the space had been drained by the presence of Emily Turner standing in the doorway, her smile strained and carefully rehearsed. I just wanted to check in. Evelyn, Emily said, her voice high, almost too sweet. You know about the move. We're all set for Saturday. Everything's packed up, and we'll make sure to be as respectful of your space as we can. Evelyn remained seated, her hands folded tightly in her lap as she listened to Emily's words. Emily had a way of talking that made everything sound like it was in Evelyn's best interest, even when it wasn't. But today, Evelyn wasn't going to let those smooth words cloud her judgment. She had seen this manipulation before, and she wasn't going to be swayed by it again. So, you're bringing the kids into my sewing room then? Evelyn asked, her tone calm, but there was an unmistakable firmness in her voice. Emily nodded with enthusiasm, as if she were offering a solution to Evelyn's deepest concerns. Yes, the kids are so excited, and we can make the space work. Martha's already packed up everything from the apartment. It's going to be great. They'll have their own room. Evelyn's heart tightened. That room was hers. The sewing room wasn't just a place. It was where she had poured decades of hard work. Each fabric, each project, a reflection of her independence. It was a place where she found solace, where she could breathe. And now it was being taken from her without a single word of consultation. You're taking over my sewing room, Evelyn said, her voice barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of years of sacrifice. That's where I go when I need to be alone, when I need peace. I've worked hard to make that space mine. Emily's smile wavered, but she pressed on. I know, Evelyn, but this is just temporary, remember? Just until we find a bigger place. And we need the space for the kids. They've been cramped in that apartment. You understand, don't you? The familiar tug of guilt began to creep into Evelyn's chest, but she fought it back. She wasn't going to let herself be manipulated again. You want me to give up my space for your convenience, don't you? You've been planning this all along without asking me, haven't you? Emily's eyes shifted nervously. She had been pushing Evelyn's boundaries for days, and now the questions were hitting too close to home. Evelyn, it's not like that. We just thought, well, you're not using the space anyway, and you're alone here. It'll be better this way. The word better hung in the air, like a sharp blade Evelyn had grown used to over the years. Better for who? Evelyn shot back, her voice rising with quiet intensity. Better for me? Or better for you? Emily took a step back, her composure faltering for the first time since she had arrived. I don't understand why you're making this so difficult. We're just trying to help you out, Evelyn. You've been on your own for so long. It'll be nice to have people around. Carolyn will be better off here too. She needs help. There it was, the emotional manipulation Evelyn had been expecting. Emily was framing the move as an act of charity. The mention of Carolyn Harris, Evelyn's aging mother-in-law, was the final push, the guilt trip she had been waiting for. It was as if Evelyn's needs and rights no longer mattered. reduced to nothing more than a simple favor they were doing for her. "You think you're doing me a favor?" Evelyn asked, her voice growing stronger with each word. "By moving in here without asking if I wanted this? By making decisions about my life without me?" Emily's face flushed. "Well, we thought it would be good for you too. We're just trying to make things easier for everyone. It's what families do." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "Family doesn't take over someone's home without asking. Emily, family doesn't manipulate someone into giving up their peace because it's easier for everyone else." She paused, her breath steadying. "I have a right to decide what happens in my own home. This isn't a charity for me. This is my life, my space." There was silence between them, the weight of Evelyn's words hanging in the air. Emily shifted uncomfortably, clearly not expecting such resistance. For the first time, Evelyn saw a crack in Emily's carefully constructed facade, the hint of uncertainty in her eyes. Evelyn leaned forward, her voice unyielding. "I've spent my entire life making sacrifices for everyone else. But not this time, Emily, not in my own home. This is where I draw the line." Emily opened her mouth to argue, but Evelyn's glare silenced her. The quiet tension between them felt like a final confrontation, the calm before the storm Evelyn had been waiting for. Evelyn stood up, her back straight, her resolve unshakable. "If you want to bring the kids here, fine. But not in my sewing room. You'll find another place for them. And as for Carolyn, you can help her, but not at the expense of my peace." Emily didn't speak. She didn't argue. She simply turned, her steps heavy with defeat. Evelyn watched her go, knowing this was just the beginning. She wasn't backing down anymore. This was her home, her life, and no one was going to take that from her. As Emily stepped outside, Evelyn felt a sense of quiet triumph. She had spoken her truth, and for the first time in years, Evelyn Turner knew what it felt like to truly stand up for herself. The sun had barely begun to dip below the horizon, casting an orange glow across Evelyn Turner's living room. When Austin Turner stormed through the door, no knock, no announcement, just the same entitled, casual entrance he'd always made, as if the house were still his, as if his decision still reigned supreme. "Austin," Evelyn said, her voice steady, though a tinge of exhaustion crept into the words. "What are you doing here?" He didn't bother with pleasantries, his frustration bubbling to the surface as he marched into the room, his face hard with anger. "We need to talk, Mom. You can't keep doing this. You can't just shut us out like this." Evelyn watched him with a calm that felt almost unnatural. After all, this was her son, the boy she had raised. But today, he wasn't the little boy she used to protect. Today, he was a man who had crossed a line, and Evelyn wasn't going to let him dictate her life any longer. "I'm not shutting anyone out, Austin. I'm simply not letting you walk all over me anymore," she replied, her voice unwavering. He huffed, pacing in front of her. "It's not like that, Mom. You're just being difficult. We're a family. We're all struggling. You have this house, all this space, and yet you're telling me I can't bring my family here? You don't even live in it anymore. What's the point?" Evelyn's eyes narrowed. She knew exactly what he was doing, trying to make her feel guilty, trying to turn her own good nature against her. He was trying to play on her heartstrings, make her believe she was the one being unreasonable. But she wasn't falling for it this time. "I live here, Austin, and I've worked too damn hard for this place to let you dictate what happens in it. I don't need to justify that to you or anyone else," she said, her voice low and firm, every word cutting through the air like a knife. Austin stepped closer, his tone turning sharper, more insistent. "You're my mother. I'm trying to help you, and you're pushing me away. Do you even realize what you're doing? I've sacrificed so much for you, and this is how you repay me?" Evelyn's chest tightened, but not with guilt. It was anger that Austin still thought he could use the past to manipulate her, to make her feel indebted to him. She had given everything for her children, everything, and yet here he was, accusing her of selfishness for wanting peace in her own home. "You've sacrificed?" she asked, a small laugh escaping her lips, bitter and sharp. "Austin, you've come to me when you needed something, but you've never once asked how I'm doing. You've never once stopped to think about what I want. You just take and take, expecting me to give." His face reddened, and his eyes flashed with a mixture of anger and desperation. "You've always said yes. Why are you acting like this now? You used to help me when I needed it. Why won't you now? Is it because I have a family? Is it because I'm trying to do the right thing? Evelyn didn't flinch. I've said yes for years, Austin. I've said yes until I couldn't breathe. I've sacrificed for you, for your sister, for everyone in this family. And look at what it got me. A house full of people who don't respect me, who think my space is just for them to invade whenever it's convenient. I've spent my whole life thinking I had to give everything for others. But not anymore. Not in my own home. Austin took a step back, clearly shaken by her words. But he wasn't done. What about the kids, Mom? What about Aiden and Sophie? They need a place to live, and you're not helping us. What kind of mother does that? What kind of grandmother? Evelyn's expression softened for a moment, but only for a moment. She had loved those kids, and she had always tried to be there for them. But that wasn't the issue now. The issue was respect. Respect for her choices, for her life, for the person she had become. I love my grandchildren, Austin. But I'm not going to sacrifice myself for them, or for anyone else, just because you think I should. If you truly want what's best for them, you'll teach them to respect others, starting with me. But you... She stopped, shaking her head. You don't respect me, Austin. You never have, and I'm done letting you walk all over me. He opened his mouth to speak, but Evelyn raised a hand, cutting him off. No, Austin, I've heard enough. I'm not your punching bag anymore, not your doormat, not your backup plan. I'm your mother, yes, but I am also a person with my own rights, my own desires, my own life. And I am no longer going to let you make decisions about my life without my consent. Austin stood there for a long moment, his chest heaving as if he couldn't quite grasp what had just happened. For the first time in his life, he was faced with his mother standing up for herself, and it hit him harder than he expected. You're really not going to let us move in? He asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. No, I'm not, Evelyn said, her voice unyielding, like iron. And I'm not going to let you manipulate me into doing something I don't want to do. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with tension. Austin stood there, still processing, but Evelyn knew. She knew this was the moment she had been waiting for. She had drawn the line. She had set the boundary, and no one was going to cross it, not again. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt a sense of power she had never known before. She had faced her son's guilt, his manipulation, and his pressure, and she had held her ground. It wasn't about being right, it was about her worth, about her life. She looked at Austin one last time. No, Austin, you can't have what you want. Not here. Not in my house. And with that, Evelyn Turner felt the weight of the past lift from her shoulders. She wasn't just a mother anymore. She was a woman, strong, determined, and free. The sun had barely risen, casting a soft glow over the tidy living room where Evelyn Turner sat, a quiet smile playing at the corners of her lips. The weight of her recent confrontation with Austin had settled in her chest, not as a burden, but as a new, lighter freedom. For the first time in years, she wasn't worried about what they needed, but what she needed. She could breathe. She could think. It was still early and the house was calm. Evelyn had made her morning coffee, the rich aroma filling the air as she poured herself a cup. She sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through the neighborhood WhatsApp group, exchanging good morning messages with Sharon Mitchell, the one friend who had never judged her. Her life had always been filled with noise, her children's needs, her husband's demands, the constant pull of everyone else's priorities. But this morning, as she sipped her coffee and read messages from Sharon about the neighborhood gossip and the latest recipes, Evelyn felt a quiet peace settle over her. It was a peace she hadn't known in years. The chaos she had feared was still coming, but she knew now that she had the power to face it on her own terms. Her days were simple now, and yet they felt rich in ways she hadn't expected. She walked to the park each morning, the gentle rustle of leaves and the soft crunch of gravel beneath her shoes grounding her in the moment. The other ladies from the walking group greeted her with smiles and warm chatter, and she smiled back, not out of obligation, but out of a growing sense of contentment. These were the moments she lived for now, the small joys, the freedom to live as she pleased. As Evelyn set her cup down, her phone buzzed with a message from Sharon. It was time. Sharon could sense the change in her, and now Evelyn was ready to act. Evelyn, are you ready for what's next? The text read. Evelyn paused for a moment, her fingers lingering over the screen. Yes, she was ready. She had been planning this for weeks, her mind clear and sharp as she calculated her next move. The confrontation with Austin had been the first step, but this was the beginning of something even bigger. She couldn't just stop here. She had to take control. She had to make sure no one would ever again make decisions for her without her consent. With a deep breath, she dialed Sharon's number. The phone rang only once before Sharon answered, her voice warm and understanding. "Evelyn, how are you feeling?" Sharon asked, her tone soothing, yet filled with a quiet strength of its own. Evelyn's smile widened, a sense of gratitude washing over her. "I feel stronger. It's strange, but I feel like I've finally woken up. Like all these years, I was living for everyone else, and now, for the first time, I'm living for myself." Sharon chuckled softly. "You've earned it, Evelyn. You've given enough." Evelyn's mind was sharp, her thoughts clear. "I've decided what to do. I'm going to sell the house. It's time to move forward. I've worked so hard for this place, but it's just a house. What's more important now is my peace. And I'm done letting Austin or anyone else take that from me." Sharon's voice became more serious, but there was no doubt in it. "Are you sure, Evelyn? This isn't just about setting boundaries with Austin, is it? This is about taking your life back." Evelyn's hand trembled slightly as she held the phone to her ear. But the thought of the house, the space it represented, and what she could do with it made her pulse quicken with excitement. "Yes, it is. I've always thought the house was my dream. But the truth is, the dream isn't the house. The dream is the freedom I've found now, and I won't let anyone take that from me." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Then Sharon's voice broke through, filled with support and warmth. "I'm proud of you, Evelyn. I'll help you with whatever you need. We'll get this done together." A deep sense of empowerment surged through Evelyn. She wasn't acting out of anger or fear anymore. She was acting out of strength, out of self-respect, and most importantly, out of a commitment to her own happiness. She had the power to make decisions now. She wasn't just a mother, a wife, a caretaker anymore. She was Evelyn Turner, and that was enough. She had her plan. She had the support she needed, and she was going to take control of her future, one step at a time. The quiet in the house felt more like a promise now than an emptiness. As Evelyn set the phone down, she stood up, her back straighter than it had been in years. There was still work to do, but she no longer felt overwhelmed. She felt in control. With Sharon's support and her own determination, Evelyn Turner was about to change her life forever. Evelyn Turner sat in her favorite armchair, the familiar worn fabric against her skin, a cup of tea steaming on the small table beside her. Outside the window, the day was clear and bright, the kind of morning that carried with it the promise of something new. For Evelyn, this morning felt different, not just because of the sale, but because she finally had a sense of ownership over her own life in a way she never had before. She had spent years working tirelessly, pouring every ounce of her energy into this house, her dream, her sanctuary. The walls of this house held memories both cherished and painful. The late nights when she worked 2 jobs to pay the bills, the quiet moments when she sat at her dining table, sipping coffee and thinking about the future. She had bought this house, earned it, fought for it, but now the house had become more of a burden than a blessing. Evelyn had made the decision a week ago, and today everything was about to change. The papers were ready. The buyer was waiting. This house, once a symbol of her independence, was now something that tied her down, and she knew deep in her heart that she was ready to let go. The phone rang, snapping her from her thoughts. It was Sharon Mitchell. "Evelyn, are you ready?" Sharon's voice was calm but filled with excitement. Evelyn smiled, a rare moment of peace washing over her. "I'm ready, Sharon. Let's do this." A quick drive through the city, and an hour later, they were sitting in the real estate office. Mr. Samuel Grant, the agent who had helped her throughout this process, greeted them with a smile. "Good morning." "Mrs. Turner, everything is set," he said as he handed her the stack of papers. Evelyn looked at the documents, her hand steady as she picked them up. Each page was a confirmation that she was making the right choice. The weight of the decision, the years of struggle, were all wrapped up in these papers. But now, in this moment, Evelyn felt a sense of relief, almost as if she were shedding a skin she'd worn too long. Sharon sat beside her, her presence a quiet strength. Evelyn could feel her friend's support, the understanding between them unspoken but deeply felt. Sharon had been there for her every step of the way, offering encouragement, keeping Evelyn grounded, and reminding her of her worth. Mr. Grant looked up from the papers. "Mrs. Turner, are you sure about this decision? It's a big step." Evelyn looked at the stack of papers in front of her. The house she'd worked for, the house that had once been her dream, was now just a chapter in her past. She thought about the peace she'd found in herself over the last few weeks. The quiet, the freedom. She wasn't just selling a house, she was buying her peace. "Yes," she said firmly, her voice steady. "I'm sure. I've worked hard for this, but I'm ready for something else. I'm ready for freedom." The words felt right as they left her lips. She had spent so many years living for others, her children, her husband, her family. And now, finally, she was living for herself. Mr. Grant nodded, a knowing look in his eyes. He had seen it before, people who had worked their entire lives only to realize they had been living for someone else's expectations, someone else's needs. But Evelyn Turner was different. She had found her voice, and she wasn't going to let anyone take it from her. After a few more minutes of paperwork, it was done. The house was sold. Evelyn handed over the keys, feeling as though a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. As she walked out of the real estate office, Sharon by her side, Evelyn felt lighter than she had in years. The house that had been a symbol of her hard work was now someone else's, but that was okay. It wasn't the house that mattered anymore. It was the life she was going to build for herself, the freedom she had gained. "I'm proud of you, Evelyn," Sharon said softly, her arm around her friend's shoulders. "You've done it," Evelyn smiled, her heart light. "I'm proud of me too." They walked out into the bright afternoon sun, the future ahead of them. Evelyn's phone buzzed with a message from the new owner, confirming that everything had gone through. She glanced at it, but instead of feeling sadness or nostalgia, she felt something new, something she hadn't expected. She felt free. This wasn't just a sale. This was a new beginning. As Evelyn and Sharon made their way back to the car, Evelyn reflected on the journey she had taken. From the woman who had spent years sacrificing her needs for others, to the woman who now stood on her own, ready to take control of her future. This was the moment she had been waiting for. This was the moment she would look back on as the start of the rest of her life. And for the first time in years, Evelyn Turner felt truly alive. The tension was thick in the air as Evelyn Turner sat in her living room, the silence pressing down on her like an invisible weight. The sun had just begun to set, casting a soft glow across the room, but Evelyn felt no warmth from it. She was waiting for Austin Turner to make his move, knowing full well that he would not give up easily. The doorbell rang, and Evelyn's heart sank. She knew what was coming. When she opened the door, Austin was standing there, his face a mixture of frustration and determination. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, as if the house still belonged to him, as if his opinion mattered more than hers. Behind him stood John Reynolds, Austin's godfather, a man who had always seemed to believe that he could smooth over family problems with a few well-chosen words. But Evelyn wasn't having any of it today. "Mom," Austin began, his voice strained, "I need to talk to you. We need this house. The kids, they need somewhere stable. You know, it's not just about us. It's about family. We're all struggling, and this house is the solution." Evelyn's eyes didn't waver as she stood before him, her posture strong, her arms crossed. "Austin, I've told you before. This house isn't your solution to your problems. It's my home, and I've made my decision. I'm not changing it." Austin's frustration was palpable, his voice rising with each word. "You're being unreasonable. You're pushing us out when we need you the most. This isn't just about a house. It's about us being a family. The kids are suffering, and you're making them pay for your selfishness." Evelyn remained calm, her expression unwavering. "Don't you dare bring the kids into this. I've raised them, Austin. I've given everything for this family. But you crossed a line when you thought you could make decisions about my life without asking me first. This isn't selfishness. This is me standing up for myself. I'm not a doormat for anyone." Austin's jaw clenched, and his face reddened with anger. You don't understand. You're making this harder than it has to be. Why can't you just let us stay? Why can't you help your own family? Before Evelyn could respond, John Reynolds, who had been quietly standing in the background, finally spoke. His voice was smooth, carrying the weight of someone who believed his age and experience gave him the right to intervene. Evelyn, this isn't like you, John said, his tone condescending but polite. You've always been the one to take care of everyone. Why are you turning your back now? Austin is just trying to help his family. Can't you see that? Evelyn turned her gaze to John, her eyes sharp and unflinching. I'm not turning my back, John. I've given enough. I've done enough. But this is my life now. I've earned the right to live it on my terms. You can't come into my house and tell me what to do. Not anymore. John's expression faltered, but Austin's frustration boiled over. He stepped forward, his face just inches from his mother's. You're being cruel, Mom. We don't have anywhere else to go. Do you really want us to be out on the streets, to have the kids suffer because of your stubbornness? Evelyn's heart didn't break. It didn't even flinch. The emotional manipulation was so predictable, so familiar, but this time, it didn't work. I've already told you, Austin, she said, her voice clear, but tinged with finality. You and Emily made your decisions without consulting me, and now you're trying to manipulate me into feeling guilty. But I'm not buying it anymore. You can't use guilt to control me. Not this time. The room fell into a tense silence. Austin stood there, his chest heaving with anger. But Evelyn stood taller than she ever had before. John Reynolds shifted uncomfortably in his seat, realizing that his usual tactics of smoothing over family squabbles weren't working this time. Evelyn, John said, attempting one final plea, you don't have to do this. You're making a decision that will tear the family apart. Think about the long-term consequences. Do you really want to be alone? The kids won't understand. They'll resent you. Evelyn took a deep breath, her resolve growing stronger with each passing second. She had heard these words too many times in her life, but she was done. She was done being manipulated, done being made to feel guilty for living her life. I've already thought about it, John. And I've made my decision. You think I'll be alone? I've spent years alone. I've learned to cherish my space, my peace, my autonomy, and if that means I have to stand firm, then so be it. Austin's eyes flashed with anger, but Evelyn could see something else in them now. A hint of uncertainty, a crack in the facade. For the first time, her son wasn't in control of the situation. Evelyn Turner had taken back the reins of her life, and there was no going back. I won't let you manipulate me anymore, Austin. I won't be the mother who sacrifices herself endlessly for everyone else. I've given enough of myself, and now it's time for me. Time for me to live my life on my terms. So no, you're not moving in. And no, I won't change my mind. Austin opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was defeated, but he didn't know how to admit it. After a moment, he turned and walked out of the room, John trailing behind him, his expression conflicted. Evelyn stood still, her heart racing, but her head held high. She had done it. She had stood her ground and refused to let anyone manipulate her anymore. As the door closed behind them, Evelyn sank into the couch, her body finally releasing the tension that had been building for days. She was exhausted, but she was also free. She had won her first real victory. Sharon called a few minutes later, her voice full of warmth. How did it go? Evelyn smiled, the weight of the past few days finally lifting. It's done. I've set my boundaries, and I won't back down. And for the first time in years, Evelyn Turner felt a profound sense of peace. She had stood up for herself, and she wasn't going to let anyone take that away from her. As Evelyn Turner stepped into her new home, the sense of peace that enveloped her was almost tangible. The weight of the past seemed to melt away, replaced by the soft hum of a future that was entirely hers. She had done it, she had taken the leap, and for the first time in decades, she could breathe deeply without the fear of someone else's expectations pressing down on her. This was her space. This was her time. The morning light streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow across her modest but cozy living room. She had always dreamed of owning a house like this, small, yet perfect for one person who had worked her entire life for the privilege of independence. The clutter of years spent sacrificing herself for others had faded, leaving only the things that mattered: the familiar comforts of her favorite armchair, the family photos on the mantel, and the peaceful garden she could tend to whenever she wished. Each day now felt like a gift. Her routine was simple yet fulfilling. She woke up early, savoring the quiet moments before the world outside began to stir. She made herself a cup of coffee, her favorite blend, and sat at the small kitchen table by the window, looking out at the flowers she'd planted in the garden. She'd never known the joy of planting something and watching it grow, not with all the years she had spent bending to others' demands. Now, she was learning to nurture her own happiness, to cultivate peace in her own life. Evelyn's morning walks were a new routine, one she relished. She had joined the neighborhood's morning walking group, led by Chloe Harris, a neighbor who had become a quick friend. The fresh air, the sound of birds chirping, and the laughter of other women who understood the importance of these peaceful moments. It was a contrast to the chaotic life she had left behind. The walks gave her time to reflect, to center herself, and to truly appreciate the strength it had taken to carve out this new life. And it wasn't just the daily routines that brought her peace. It was the relationships she was now nurturing. Sharon Mitchell, her closest friend, had been by her side every step of the way, supporting her through the toughest decisions. They spent hours together, sharing stories, cooking meals, and simply enjoying the company of someone who respected her as an equal. Sharon understood Evelyn's journey better than anyone. She, too, had lived through the struggle of finding herself, of asserting her worth after years of being overlooked. Evelyn had also begun to build connections with her new neighbors. Chloe Harris, a fellow widow, had become a regular visitor, sharing gardening tips and helping Evelyn get her hands dirty in the garden. Jenna Walters, another neighbor, was a retired teacher who had a gentle way about her, always ready with a book recommendation or a kind word. Together they formed a tight-knit group of women who found strength in each other, who celebrated their independence and supported each other's dreams. As Evelyn sat on her porch one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, she reflected on how far she had come. There had been a time when she couldn't imagine standing up for herself, when the thought of saying no to her family would have been unthinkable. But now she understood the value of her own voice, her own needs. She realized that it was not selfish to put herself first. It was necessary. By standing up for herself, she had given herself the freedom to live on her terms, and that had made all the difference. Evelyn Turner had spent most of her life living for others. She had been the devoted mother, the supportive wife, the dutiful daughter-in-law. She had sacrificed her dreams, her peace, and her happiness for the sake of everyone else's. But now, for the first time, she was living for herself. No longer bound by guilt, no longer consumed by the needs of others, Evelyn had reclaimed her life. She had learned that being true to herself had made her stronger. The woman she had become was someone who didn't need to please anyone. She didn't need validation from her children or her family. She no longer feared being alone, because she knew deep down that she was enough. Her mind drifted back to the conversation she had with Austin just days before she moved out of the house. He had tried to guilt her, to make her feel like a bad mother, but she had stood her ground. She had refused to let him manipulate her, and as she sat in her new living room, surrounded by the things that brought her comfort and peace, she knew she had made the right decision. Evelyn Turner smiled to herself. She was free from the emotional blackmail, the guilt, and the demands that had once defined her life. She was no longer the woman who said yes to everything, the woman who let everyone else's needs come before hers. Now, she was living for herself. And it felt incredible. She picked up her phone and scrolled through the messages from her WhatsApp group, smiling as she read the messages from her new friends. They had already planned their next walk, and Evelyn couldn't wait. But first, she paused, taking a deep breath. She had earned this moment. She had earned her peace, her freedom, and the life she had always dreamed of. As she leaned back in her chair, the weight of the past truly lifted from her shoulders. Evelyn Turner was no longer defined by the expectations of others. She was simply Evelyn, a woman who had fought for herself, a woman who had learned to live her own life on her own terms. and for the first time, she felt truly at home. As Evelyn stood tall, reclaiming her peace, she realized that sometimes standing up for yourself means setting boundaries, even with the people you love most. The journey of self-respect wasn't easy, but it was hers to take. If you enjoyed Evelyn's journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with others who need a reminder of their own strength. And don't forget to comment below with your thoughts on setting boundaries and living for yourself. 3 life lessons from Evelyn's story. Never compromise your peace for anyone. It's important to protect your mental and emotional space. It's never too late to stand up for yourself, no matter your age or circumstances. You always have the power to make decisions for your life. Respect is earned, not demanded. True love and respect come when you show others that you respect yourself first.